There comes a moment in every person's life when they pause, look at themselves, not in the mirror, not in a photo, but in the quiet of their own mind, and realize something unsettling. This is not who I thought I'd become. It's not failure that speaks, not shame, not regret, but a softer voice, a quiet sense that you've drifted away from yourself one decision at a time, one compromise at a time, without ever noticing the distance growing. That moment is uncomfortable. It feels like standing at the edge of something uncertain, something unfamiliar. But that discomfort is not a problem to solve. It is the beginning of transformation. It is the mind waking up. We love to think transformation is a dramatic event, a sudden breakthrough, a moment of divine inspiration. But the truth is far more subtle. Real change begins in silence. It begins before the new behavior, before the new habit, before the new life. It begins as a psychological revolution inside your own mind. A tiny shift, a doubt, a crack in an old belief. A sense that the story you've been living is too small for the person you're becoming. Because transformation is not about doing different things. It's about seeing differently. Your brain literally begins rewiring when you question your assumptions. Old neural patterns weaken. New ones start forming. Thought by thought, choice by choice, you're sculpting a different version of yourself, even when nothing looks different on the outside. That's why transformation often feels like confusion before it feels like clarity. Your mind is reorganizing itself. Your identity is stretching. Your old narratives are losing their authority. And yet, you don't have the new story fully formed. It's an in-between state, uncomfortable, but essential. But here's the truth most people never hear. You cannot build a new life with the identity that built your old one. You can change habits, routines, schedules, and watch them collapse weeks later. Not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline, but because your identity did not change. If you secretly believe you're the kind of person who always messes up, your mind will fight to protect that belief. If you believe you're not deserving, your actions will unconsciously sabotage anything good. If you see yourself as someone who can't change, your brain will treat transformation like a threat. Identity is the foundation of behavior. Change the foundation, and the structure follows. This is why transformation often begins with a strange, quiet rebellion. You stop believing every thought you think. You start questioning the voice in your head that sounds like certainty but is really conditioning. You begin to wonder, who told me I'm this limited? Who decided what I'm capable of? Was it truly me, or simply the environment I grew up in? Most of our beliefs were formed long before we understood what beliefs even are. From parents, culture, school, early experiences. And without realizing it, we spend our adult lives defending a version of ourselves that a younger, frightened version of us invented for survival. Transformation is the moment you stop defending that old version. But here's the paradox. Your ego will resist. Not because it hates growth, but because its job is to keep your world predictable, to protect what is familiar, even when the familiar hurts you. This psychological mechanism is called homeostasis, the mind's attempt to keep your identity consistent. If you act differently from who you believe you are, your mind feels discomfort and tries to restore the old balance. This is why motivation fails. This is why willpower is temporary. This is why people relapse into old habits. They're trying to upgrade behavior without updating identity. But transformation begins the moment you shift the story you tell about yourself. The moment you stop saying, "This is just who I am," and start saying, "I am someone who is becoming." That shift, small, barely noticeable, is the psychological spark that ignites the entire process. But it doesn't happen in isolation. Your environment shapes your identity too. Every conversation, every person you allow near your mind, every space you live in reinforces who you believe yourself to be. If you surround yourself with people who only recognize your past, you will keep returning to who you used to be. If you stay in spaces that reflect old patterns, your brain receives constant reminders of an identity you're trying to shed. Transformation requires environmental honesty. What around you pulls you forward? What around you keeps you small? What do you need to release, not out of hatred, but because you're outgrowing it? But the deepest layer of transformation is not about the outside world at all. It's about what you allow yourself to feel inside. Because you cannot transform what you refuse to feel. Emotions are signals, data from the subconscious. Anger shows your boundaries. Sadness shows your wounds. Anxiety shows your uncertainty between the self you were and the self you're becoming. When you stop suppressing these emotions and start listening to them, the mind stops fighting itself. The inner conflict softens. Healing begins. Psychologists call this integration. Accepting the parts of yourself you tried to reject. The fearful part, the insecure part, the angry part, the exhausted part. Instead of fighting them, you listen, you understand. You make space for them without letting them control you. Transformation is not self-attack, it is self-reconciliation. And the real breakthroughs are rarely dramatic. They happen in moments too small for others to notice. You pause instead of reacting. You breathe instead of exploding. You say no when you used to say yes out of fear. You tell the truth instead of hiding. You choose alignment instead of approval. These micro-choices are psychological revolutions. And when enough of them accumulate, something strange happens. You outgrow a version of yourself you once believed you would carry forever. One day you look back and realize, the things that used to trigger me don't anymore. The thoughts that used to control me have lost their power. The pain that used to define me has become a lesson. That is self-transformation, not becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before fear taught you to shrink. You return to your truth, your clarity, your depth. You walk with a groundedness that doesn't rely on outcomes. You speak without rehearsing. You act without pretending. You exist with a sense of inner alignment that feels both unfamiliar and strangely like home. And if you're in that in-between phase right now, the space where the old self is fading and the new self isn't stable yet, understand this deeply. You are not lost. You are rearranging. You are repatterning. You are evolving. Transformation isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. Something you participate in moment by moment. And when it finally takes shape, you won't feel like you've become extraordinary. You'll feel like you've become honest. This is the if verse, the place where your future self starts speaking louder than your past. Subscribe. There's so much more to explore. Thank you for watching.